Editing lineup. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Best Darn Everything, a sub podcast where Richie and I talk about things other than Simpsons, and we bring friends along. Today, we are talking about Blockbuster specifically, a store that I visited frequently but never worked at. However, I have three guests, or Richie and two other guests along for the day to have much better stories, and we're off to a great start. So I'll go ahead and just pass it off to my customer service manager, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid.
Dear Lord, I do not want to be in charge of dealing with customers from Blockbuster anymore. I've done that plenty. And man, we have a lot to talk about today, and I don't know what Jamie and Justin are going to say, but I like this whole Blockbuster documentary thing. Everyone's like, oh, it's the greatest place on earth to work. Shut up, first of all. We will get into that. And everyone's like, oh, I want to go visit that Blockbuster. And I'm like, no, it looks exactly like where I spent over 5 years of my life. And I don't need to step foot in there ever again.
I remember not getting enough vacation from that place. I'm not going to spend my vacation to go to that place.
Especially when they're like, we don't even go rent anything. We just want to go inside. No, stay away. Don't worry about it. But that's rude to the one remaining Blockbuster. But for now, let me throw it back to you. I got it right? Yeah. The man, the myth, the movie passer. It is Miles.
And again, I didn't actually work for Blockbuster, but I reached out when I watched the last Blockbuster documentary, which I'll go ahead and say, watching the last Blockbuster by Netflix is like watching The Life of Nicole Brown by O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on. But it was still a really well-made doc. I thought I enjoyed it. It made me entertained for 90 minutes, and I felt very nostalgic and fond towards a place that I visited a lot and was managed by our next guest, who comes from the Epic Shells podcast. Epic Shells, I might have fucked it up. He's Close the enough. TMNT dude. He's the Turtles dude that we love so much. Welcome back to the show, Justin Cooper.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah,
and so, of course, sorry, I'm just gonna go ahead and introduce you.
That's all good.
I'm awkward today, y'all. It's fine. Our other guest, you didn't actually work for a Blockbuster. She worked for a video store rental place in Chicago that she has stories to tell about. Welcome back to the show, Jamie Z.
Hey, thanks everybody. Yeah, I worked at a place in Chicago called Nationwide Video. I've also worked at a movie trading company, but I'm also just like a childhood fan. Blockbuster, a magical realm to me. It never happened to be like this weird place that I worked at and then got trapped in a replica of. That happened to me with Party City, but that's a different podcast, I guess.
Weird.
Yeah, somebody awesome. Podcast about Party City. We'll put you in touch.
Heart of a Party City.
So Justin, you actually managed a Blockbuster store, and it wasn't also Chicago, was it? Where was the store that you managed?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Connecticut, and we had Blockbuster in Southington, Connecticut, which is right down the street from ESPN. That's where I grew up. So I had the luck, I'll say, of managing the one in Plainville, which is where Rob Zombie lives. So and I know that he had actually rented in the store before too, because we looked up his card one time. So. Yeah. So I managed that, and then I moved to New Britain, Connecticut, the home of Stanley. Stanley, they make tools and Black & Decker and all that, which was the absolute ghetto. And when I say the absolute ghetto, I mean that there's train tracks behind it. There's hypodermic needles there. You have to kick them out of the way so you can open the door. You have to look both ways 7 times before you leave to drop the deposit in the morning. And we were right across from the police station. So it was like, wow. And boy, was that an interesting place for, a suburban guy to go. Is like, hey, guess what?
What do you recommend to that person to rent that night?
Oh, it's all Scarface. It's all Scarface. There's one copy of Scarface that gets circulated through the entire town. And, it's like now that entire city is in debt because they all had late fees for Scarface.
You think people are renting Scarface just hoping there's some leftover Coke in the case that they can take advantage of?
We would actually wipe that one off. You had to, because like at the time, like the Xbox games would all come back with like weed seeds in them, and Scarface would come back with like strange, powder on it. We're like, shit, we're cleaning this. So it was like always like that.
Dude, I went to Movie Trading Company not that long ago and was looking through Sega Genesis games, and there was literally a nug of weed shoved up in that, like, and I mean, like, as soon as I touched it, it just went to like dust. I was going to try to smoke it, of course.
I was going to say, did you buy that one?
No, I was legit going to, like, if I could have, like, taken that, I'd been like, well, they don't want this here, and I can help them with that problem. But it just disintegrated when I touched it.
It's like, oh, this is an interesting copy of Joust for Atari. Oh, it's like...
You can play that game for hours, bro.
Story about working at the Blockbuster, but I have a story from working at my store about a drug dealer leaving like multiple sacks of weed and a copy of Yellow Submarine on VHS. And like
that's the gift he's giving to the world.
It is. Well, it was also like the drop box. You would like leave money and pick up the weed from the Yellow Submarine.
I mean, that's what drop box means, right?
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Did he call to get it back, or
like was this like a reoccurring thing that all the employees just knew was happening? But you're like, that's fine. Like we're gonna get paid the same.
Yeah, eventually, like the manager found out and shut it down, but it went on for like months.
And you worked at a place, you said, in Chicago where it was like one level was like a kind of like a family-friendly video, like what you'd expect from this documentary. And the other place was a little bit like XXX rated stuff, like old school porn tapes.
It did. Okay,
was it like
so it was
a sex shop, or like was it just like video rental? Was it like actually like a sex shop like we know today, or was it like just video rentals for porn?
No, it was all video rentals, including the porn. The first level was like it wasn't quite like Blockbuster family because it was in like a hipster area, so it was a lot of like independent and hard to find titles. Like there was like for cinephiles to come, there'd be like a bunch of strange like VHS only oddities and stuff that they would rent out, and then like whatever mainstream shit was selling, and then the bottom half of the store was all porn, split up into straight, gay, and transsexual were their category names. And it would just like anything in the store had a little tag that you would take off the video that was like attached to Velcro and bring that up, and then they would give you whatever your movie rental was. And there were like many people who came there just to like be porn connoisseurs in the downstairs. Like there was like people who would come like on the Tuesday new release date of like a new erotic ready to go. Like when we would open the store, it had like a pretty rabid following, I guess. It was an interesting place to work.
That sounds like it. Like, I mean, that sounds like the type of place that at least you're going to go home with a good story every night.
Yeah.
And a happy ending.
Right?
And they always buy extra butter popcorn.
So there's a lot. There's a lot of things I want to ask you all from like the customer perspective, but admittedly, there are some of these things that Richie and I have actually already had fairly in-depth conversations about. Like one of the things that we've talked about that I think from both sides of the coin, the customer and the employee, one of the things I really miss about Blockbuster was that experience of actually getting to have a conversation with somebody about what movie they'd recommend and why. Like not just a rating or a thumbs up, but like no, what is it about me as a person that makes you think that I would like this? Or Richie, I think, gave me an example. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he basically gave a customer a recommendation of that movie is trash. It's absolutely unrentable. It may have been Coop, sorry, but either way, it's a terrible rental. Don't do it. And they're like, well, okay, but I'm going to check it out for myself. And then they come back and they're like, wow, that was shit. And then they're like, but you told me that. So what else would you recommend or not recommend? And then like suddenly from telling somebody like that movie's shit, like suddenly they trust your opinion on like, well, what might I like better than shit?
That's one of the things I think, because they even talk about a similar story in the documentary, The Last Blockbuster. But that's something I believe the documentary actually nailed on the head pretty well, is the camaraderie over movies that you build when you're working there. Like you have your regulars, even in the movie pass days when late fees for them weren't really a thing anymore. But you're building relationships with these people, and like it's fun figuring out. It's like a puzzle where you figure out what kind of movies certain people like, and you're trying to find that one movie they haven't seen yet that came out 10 years ago that they've never even heard of, and you want to find it for them just so they'll come back and be like, oh man, that movie was so awesome. Is there anything similar to that? But what sucked is when you've done that like 7 times with that customer and they're like, what else you got? And you're like,
damn, dude, I've kind of tapped this well.
Yeah.
Have you heard of IMDb?
But I know we said Justin was a manager there. I was not a manager. I was a key holder at a Blockbuster for I don't know how many years, but I was there twice actually. I kept talking because I figured Justin was going to jump in. I scared Justin off with my false credentials.
I think you just got promoted, bro.
Damn it. But no, I worked in high school at Blockbuster for about 6 months, and then like 5 to 8 years later, I went back and worked 5 years again. I worked for a couple different stores in the Fort Worth area in Texas, and I think every employee has definite stories to tell about certain situations that happen. Like you see weird stuff sometimes in Blockbuster, but like you're talking about drugs being in a lot of movies back then. One of the funnier ones that I had one time is we had this dude that would rent copies of movies, and we knew that he was burning the movies, and it was very apparent because he would rent like 5 movies at a time, bring them back the same day. And one time I opened up all the returns, and they were all the burnt copies that he left inside.
Oops.
Dude, totally messed up. Like it was very clear, like the back of all the discs looked bright purple, and you're like, I don't think this is gonna play in any of our DVD players. But yeah, people tried some crazy stuff back in the day. All right, good. I'm not a manager anymore.
The powers that be are just trying to keep me silent, I guess. I don't know.
We're just glad to have a supervisor. Thank you.
It's crazy. I've got some stories. So you were saying they put all the burned copies in there. That's one of the things you'd run across. We had a guy called the Slicer who Blockbuster always had these DVDs with these yellow little pins in them, and we had to take them out. The Slicer would show up, and besides stealing Yu-Gi-Oh cards, that was his big thing. He would slice open the packages of the movies and take the DVDs out, and then end up stealing the DVDs. This guy, I swear, before they caught him, he must have hit like 300 stores and like put like a whole bunch of them out of business by stealing a whole ton of stuff.
Wow.
There was a way you could do it where with the yellow lock was inside the movie. If you had like a little razor blade or something, you got the DVD box. You could hit the spine away from the lock down the side. And you could
well, guys, you might be encouraging other people to steal from Blockbuster. Think about the responsibility we have on this show. Hold on.
Hey, if they're going to steal from Blockbuster, they better take that jock strap at this point. Right?
Yeah.
Man, I enjoyed that.
Why, dude? How did that get? We're gonna cut ahead there, but how the fuck are you gonna hold out on the jock strap, dude? You donate all of the other shit, but not the jock strap. Nobody cares about anything but the part that his stuff was in. That's what we want to see.
He's like, you want my jock strap? That'll be a fight.
Are you not entertained? Miles, I know that you were probably just as happy as I was when they played the John Oliver clip in the documentary, because we both actually watched that episode of John Oliver like that night that it came out, because we both love that show. But I was happy to see he had some screen time, and he actually helped preserve a couple Blockbusters for at least a few months there.
Yeah, give him some legs. I think that's pretty cool. As the customer side of things, I absolutely love that experience. I love getting to go in and talk to employees. I wish I could remember some of their names, because I remember them, like, I genuinely remember their faces and our conversations that we had. I'm just terrible with names, but like I had some like meaningful conversations in a Blockbuster about my love of film and like why there would be certain movies that I would or wouldn't like. And like I remember an employee that while I had the movie pass, like every day I was there, and we literally every single time I rented a movie, we'd have a discussion about the movie, either that we both had seen it, one of us hasn't, one of us had whatever. But like we legitimately learned about each other's like interest in film and could start recommending stuff back and forth at each other. And that was like the part that you just can't replicate in our world today. Jamie, from the non-corporatized Blockbuster version, from like the hipster version from your store, did you also feel that sense of camaraderie with your customers?
Oh, absolutely. There'd be like anything that we had that another store wouldn't like that you couldn't find at a Blockbuster or whatever. People would get very excited to find it and would often go on rabbit hole. And, you know, we got to do the employee picks So
And I
that was a
love
big
those.
point
Those
of
are fun.
conversation.
For
And I
me,
was
I'm
right
like
back
I got to learn about like, oh, I do like this person's opinion.
Yeah. It's cool to see like a person's taste like right there. Like these are their 5 movies, and to see it with all the video art is just like very cool. And to like feel like you can know that person a little bit from that too, if they're not the person you're having a conversation with, is another film bringing people together.
I
Yeah,
think
who's
like
this
one,
Steven, right? With the pics? Yeah, who's that guy?
Yeah.
I
He had
think
to
one of
catch
the places, or I'm like one of the medias that got that the best was Clerks, of course, Kevin Smith. So much of his movie was based around him working in a video rental store, and like if there was ever like somebody that tried to capture the magic of what that experience was like, it's his movies in that way. Like when you see Randall at the store, like you can tell he's had that same conversation with so many people. He's just like, fuck these basic bitches.
He's so jaded. It's so funny because he's like the dark side of that coin where, like that documentary and then everything that Jamie's talking about and Richie's talking about, it's like, those are all the good pieces. But it's like Randall, I don't know if he had the same experience I had where he was almost stabbed with rusty scissors over a movie. So it's like, did he have that? Someone was trying to steal a GameCube controller. Maybe Randall didn't care. He's like, go,
Wow, that got dark.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, that's the flip side of the business. I remember when someone was trying to steal DVDs, and I literally just threw snowballs at the guy to try to get him to stop and drop them. So I hit him in the back of the neck, but it didn't work.
That sounds like they should make like a family-friendly holiday movie around that plot, like somebody defending the family store with snowballs.
I had like a 14 or 15-year-old kid once put a couple of VHS tapes down the front of his pants and like was holding his pants running out the door.
No, bro, I'm just hung real big, like.
Yeah, I told my manager, I was like, I can literally catch that kid right now. Like he was a fat, chubby kid, and he was like slowly getting away in the distance. And he got like
with little cartridges just falling as he ran.
He got like 2 blocks down the road, and I was like, I can still catch him. I promise you, I will catch him. Like he looks like Homer after he takes 3 steps in the Marge Cop episode and starts feeling over, breathing heavily. Like, no, Blockbuster policy says you can't do that. And I was like, I'm just gonna get the movies and bring them back. I'll wear gloves. I don't care. Like, no, they called the cops, and the cops almost got there in time before he got away. It was just people, man.
My old boss at this ghetto Blockbuster that I worked at, his name is Dave, right? Dave looked like, if you've seen Reservoir Dogs, he looked like Joe from Reservoir Dogs, except for he was missing teeth and he had bad prison tattoos. Now, why did Dave have bad prison tattoos? Because he went to prison for killing a guy. He was running guns across the Gulf of Mexico and supposedly accidentally killed someone with an M16. But that's a whole different story. So past that, Dave was legendary in our town, and people didn't want to steal from Dave because he literally picked up a kid's bike and hit the kid with the bike, like that movie The One. So everyone was like, "What? What the heck?" So I show up and I'm like, "Hey, Dave, I just transferred in, yada yada yada." He's like, "Okay, if you steal from me, I'll kill you." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, good to know where we stand." It was great.
Cool. So we have a no theft policy. Got it.
Yeah. Oddly enough, we could not keep a staff. It was a good time.
I want to know, what was your guys' best late fee stories? Because that's the big. Everybody hates late fees. Everyone says they're all BS. First of all, I want to clear this up for all the customers out there. The whole back in the day, like return the movie before noon thing, or you get the late fee, was just the line they gave you to an extent. People would return it and be like, I returned it at like noon 05. I shouldn't get charged a late fee. That's BS. You're full of crap, because the actual policy was return it by noon, but you actually had until 2 o'clock. So if you returned it at 1 o'clock, we'd be like, oh, well, we'll see if we can help you out. And we'd scan it and you wouldn't be charged a late fee. So if you had late fees, I'd say 95 to 98% of the time, they were actually true late fees, and maybe even more than that. And that was a big, business, or a big portion of sales for Blockbuster, obviously, as the documentary again portrays how much they lost and they got rid of them. But I'm just curious, Jamie, if your store had late fees, and Justin, what are like some fun late fee stories you have? Go, Jamie.
Well, my personal late fee record as a customer at Blockbuster was like having to purchase the movie Cool as Ice, starring Vanilla Ice, because I had it for so long.
That makes me love you so much more as a person. We're going to talk about that later.
You had it so long it went back in style.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time and very late at the same time. But as for the store that I worked at in Chicago, they would have late fees, but the bigger issue with that store was we had cleaning fees for the pornographic material because I don't know why they were on the material itself, but if there was like any kind of cleaning that had to be done, just like an automatic fee. And like
it was just assumed it was something we would have to put gloves on for.
Yeah, just like a lot of. I never had to clean anything personally, but I rang up some, and some people would try to contest it, and it's just like, then you clean it.
That's called the comeback fee.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Justin, top that.
Well, I
Or
mean,
bottom, whatever.
with anything, right? It's all about how you approach your customer service rep. It's how you approach your manager and stuff like that. If you come in and you're hellfire and brimstone and you're a complete Karen or just like a jerk about it or something like that, we're gonna stick you to the rules anytime. But if maybe you bought like a popcorn or something like that, or you got like a soda, or you're a rewards member or had the movie pass or something like that at one point, it's like, yeah, we would take care of you. My boss said that you have a certain amount of late fees that you can't exceed for a month. If you go past that, then he doesn't get a bonus. If he doesn't get a bonus, he'd kill me. So it's
Dave.
Yeah. But I mean, that's
this is a very low stakes minimum wage job.
And I mean, that's the thing too. We didn't deal with it a lot because most of the people that we had towards the end were just movie pass customers.
Yeah.
So I mean, good stories with this. I mean, I tried to listen to what the district manager said one time and to exceed expectations. So I'm like, all right, so you're not just going to get one free rental, you're going to get 7 free rentals. And they found out and they're like, yeah, we're going to call her back and tell her she's just going to get 3. Like, I appreciate what you're thinking. I'm like, and every time you come in, you get a free bag of popcorn. They're like, and you can't do that too. And I'm like, well, I already told her. So, you
have to call her back and tell her that she's not getting her popcorn. I'm not going to do that.
Oh, I didn't. I just paid for the popcorn, and I'm like, this is for that. Well, I mean, what are you going to do? It's like my word, and then you're never going to listen to me again when you come back in. And it's like if I want,
that's fair.
It's $4. I think it was like something like that.
And if you just run to Costco and buy some popcorn and replace the baggie, they'd probably never know.
Yeah, and I just picked it up from the bottom of the pile. I was like, all right, there you go. The part that usually the mop touches at the end of the night.
So, like, admittedly, I was probably the worst Blockbuster customer when it came to that because I was definitely like, I'm always just lazy. I won't pay for Uber Eats. I'm like, no, if I can't go, I don't need it that bad. I was always like, I'll go to the grocery store and get snacks and then go to Blockbuster and get movies or whatever. So like from like an upselling standpoint, I was probably a really terrible customer, but I was a very repeat customer through like every era of Blockbuster. Like Blockbuster was born the same year I was, and like as young as I can remember, I remember going to Blockbuster. Very much like The Simpsons. It's like just always been a part of my life. And like even more like in tune with like what Jamie has going on. Like when I lived where my parents like still live in this little town called Newark, Texas. There's just this like hole in the wall video rental store. And I would literally go through the horror and the comedy sections just one by one in alphabetical order. And like, there weren't that many options in each it was literally one shelf of each. And I would just get through them all and be like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to rewatch, the next, start over again at A, basically.
9. Going back to Ski School 1, and then you'll watch Ski School 2.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you bring that. My store specifically had Ski School 1 and 3, and they never whoever rented 2 just never brought it back.
Wait a second. They made a 3?
Well, with the cliffhanger at the end of 2, how could they not?
I completely made all that up. I'm sorry.
I'm using it as a cocaine stash box.
I'm such a Dean Cameron fan. He was in Rockula, so I mean, Men at Work. So I was like, I need to
I'm
this
sorry
movie.
that it's got your hopes up though for Ski School 3. We can make it if you'd like.
I will.
We'll
yeah.
cast it right now. We'll just make this happen.
Well, obviously Dean
Back in
Cameron.
session.
Let's see who was in the Ski School 2. That guy who was on ESPN. I forget. I don't know.
Hey,
No,
is there anybody in Cool as Ice that needs work?
probably Rob
Um,
Van Ween. Was Madonna in that one? Yeah.
no.
So one of the other things that was like super heartbreaking though from my side of it, I had a point earlier. It got lost. It's fine. One thing that as a customer, it broke my heart every time I'd like have conversations with employees as they were doing this. They'd be buffing the DVDs so that they couldn't they had to be thrown out or whatever. And they'd have to like scratch them up intentionally so they couldn't be stolen from the dumpsters or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can't you just slide one over to me? Like, I like that movie and you are destroying it. I would like to own it.
You remember Transfer and Destroys, Richie?
Yeah, I definitely remember doing that. I just want to pinch every penny, I guess. It's one of the other things I'm glad the documentary brought up is the price of like the VHS tapes. Like being $99 because that was legitimately true, which shows the whole marketing strategy and way that they have to make all their money back. But yeah, I remember doing Transfers and Destroys. I actually like doing Transfers and Destroys just because I got to use a knife the whole time. Don't arrest me or
You
anything.
evil bastard.
Don't come at me. But yeah,
you're canceled, Richie.
So you didn't get the unwritten law of Blockbusters that any of the magazines, any of the DVDs that were or the games that were transferred and destroyed, you would pretty much take home.
No, what I did was when the stores started closing and there was still a lot of gray area on what they would or wouldn't let us do. They started letting me take one voodoo code of each movie home. So I would just pass the voodoo codes to Miles and we had this like huge collection.
We have a very stacked voodoo account. If you are
That's
ever
awesome.
like out of for whatever reason, you no
All
longer have
streaming services
Netflix.
fail.
Yeah, we've got several hundred movies on lock.
And they came back like 6 months later and they're like, no, you can't do that anymore. And I was like, too late.
And then I think we're past the statute of limitations. So then he would just start taking a picture of the voodoo code and sending it to me because technically he wasn't taking it.
I did not do that. Don't make up shit. It's the
Quit
stores.
trying to duck, dude. Blockbuster's not coming after you anymore, bro. You
I
can
didn't even have a camera phone back then. That's how long ago Blockbuster was a thing. The whole store closing thing in Dish Network always kind of peeves me with Blockbuster too, just because like it's when Dish Network took over Blockbuster. Just a little more insider information for you. Blockbuster filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and one of the stipulations I heard of any company buying them was they could not buy Blockbuster to straight liquidate them. That was in like the bylaws or whatever part of the Chapter 11 buyout or whatnot. So it was trying to have a way to like keep the business going. And when Dish first bought us, they're like, you got to start selling Dish Network and all this other stuff. And they made it very, very, the one thing you had to get from every customer was their email address. So basically what I feel like is what they were doing was just trying to get Blockbuster's customer database because all these Blockbusters had everybody in the near area on file there basically. So I figured they wanted everyone capturing emails. So they had this whole new database of customers they could email Dish Network stuff to. And I actually sold a customer on a Dish Network package one time, but found out later that their apartment complex had a contract through Dish. So I did not get credit for the sale, even though you're supposed to get commission for it. And so the customer said they weren't going to do it if Richie didn't get credit. And they're like, well, if you want any kind of satellite, you have to get it through us. And that day,
that's like the hardest way somebody had to go to be like, fuck Richie.
Yeah, exactly. So during that day, I just quit trying to.
They went out of their way to make sure that you were like, no, dude, fuck you.
After that,
we're
I
gonna
was
take
like,
an
no.
extra step to make sure you don't get your 30 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I'm gonna call you the Dish kid.
But I always felt very, very indifferent about Dish Network because I feel like they just wanted all the customer information, and that was their reasoning.
That was literally what they did. That they're not speculating at this point. It's been like pretty well known. That's exactly what they did. They were data mining. That was their entire acquisition strategy. I mean,
I haven't read into it since then. That was a long time ago.
Like I mean, it's really the only thing that makes sense. Like, why else would you buy a company that's clearly dying?
Yeah, exactly.
They could have done so many things, though. You think about the brand and all that. You could have had Blockbuster brand popcorn. You could have had Blockbuster brand streaming service. You could have had Blockbuster.
You could still
brand
do that
anything.
if it was still around, even like dwindling today. It could be rebranded in a manner.
Whoa, hold up. You guys remember the Blockbuster exclusive movies with that little symbol on it? Again, documentary brought it up.
Some of them are streaming now on Netflix.
You could have had Blockbuster streaming if Blockbuster would have bought Netflix. But to be honest,
they did have Blockbuster streaming.
Hold up. If I saw something that was like, but they said they could have bought Netflix out before it became a thing, and then all the movies would be, TV shows like Stranger Things would be a Blockbuster exclusive. If I saw a Blockbuster exclusive moniker on like Stranger Things, I probably never would have watched it.
Yeah, you're like, that's gonna be trash.
Yeah, all the Blockbuster exclusives were terrible.
To Netflix credit, their original series, for the most part, have been pretty solid until they got a little crazy there for a while. Won't prove anything, but.
Hey, I'm still hopeful that they'll eventually get to a season 2 of the Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. So here's to hoping for that one.
Interesting.
So I have an interesting Netflix story though. When I was working for Blockbuster, I actually I went and I hopped a flight to Chicago and I met the creator of Netflix, who at the time was working for Redbox. So,
Jesus.
So this is so convoluted.
You're an influencer, dude.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. And
thank you for wearing our shirt.
just to give you a good idea of the time frame, he had a screener for Final Destination 5. So that's when this was.
Wow.
I love that movie.
So it's I walked in and I'm like, oh, cool. This is in the theater. So I'm like, all right, play it cool, Justin, play it cool, And I met the guy. I shook his hand. I'm like, so yeah, you created Netflix. He's like, oh yeah, my brainchild, blah 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 blah. And then I have an interview with this guy because I'm trying to work for Redbox, and it was one of those things where I go in and I'm like, all right, that's another thing that's like phased out now with Redbox. It's like, all right, but this is like so long ago now, it's just surreal where it's like, holy crap, I met the creator of Redbox, I met the creator of Netflix, I had an interview with these guys, I turned the job down because I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is going anywhere with Redbox. They're still around today, but man, it was just such a surreal thing. And the reason they were interested in me is because I was working at a Blockbuster. And I'm like, this has literally nothing to do with fixing kiosks and stuff like that. I'm like, but they were just like, yeah, but you work at a Blockbuster. I'm like, okay. It was crazy.
Poaching.
Yeah, by the way, it was they wanted to give me $35,000 to be a district manager for Redbox. And I was like, no, thanks. So.
But today's money
I still use Redbox. I will occasionally get like a disc out of their kiosk because it's at a 7-Eleven I frequent often. And like sometimes I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that. I'll pay for that now. And I have
you
a
ask the
DVD
machine
player.
How the movie is?
Honestly, I still like. There's
is?
still a part of me that I guess, and I'm honestly like realizing that this right now, but like. I guess that's like the closest thing I have to the equivalent of like walking through and just making a judgment call based on nothing but the poster of the movie. Because I'll sometimes scroll through a Redbox and be like, you know what? I do want to watch the remake of Wrong Turn. That sounds interesting to me.
I heard that's good.
I haven't seen it yet, but it's one that caught my eye at Redbox that I want to check out.
Was it good, Jamie?
Oh, I like Redbox because it shows you like what's a new, like not split up by studio or streaming service. So I can be like, oh, I've never heard of this.
It shows you what's happening.
The poster, and I'll be like, oh, I'll look that up on my phone of where to find it.
And they have games, right?
Yeah, I'll save this $2 by not being an idiot because I have the internet at home. But you know what? I'm just like, it's convenient. I'll take the disc and I'll put it in my PlayStation and we'll have a good time. People will start messaging me to play games and I'll be like, I'm watching a movie. I like bonus features.
Me too.
I am
Definitely
a fan of Blu-ray features. Like one of my favorite Blu-rays that I own and watch regularly is the Back to the Future like special editions where you can do all the bullshit they have about Back to the Future because that movie's old as fuck and it's interesting how they made it. I I love special features, and that's something that is commonly lost in this Netflix era.
Yeah, you can't look up a gag reel for most movies on all movies on Netflix, and that's one of the things I love doing.
Well, and here's the thing: is it's all readily available on YouTube if we look for it. But there's something organic about. I don't want to look for it. I just really enjoyed this movie, and suddenly it's popping up with suggestions of other things about this movie that I might like. Click, cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board with that, and that's kind of lost now.
I'm with you. I'm a big special features guy. I watched, I think, all of the Lord of the Rings with the commentary from the director and all that. And I mean,
even the fucking trees just walk in that movie.
Oh yeah.
Did any of you guys, Justin, you might have done this because you worked for Blockbuster. Did you ever take the marquees home with the names of the movies on them?
All the time, yeah.
I always wanted to put a border all around the room with all of my favorite movies from every time we got the new ones in there. And when I worked for Blockbuster in high school, one of my best friends also worked there, and we would get duplicate copies of all of them and take them all home. And man, I got my Jessica Alba Fantastic Four standee from Blockbuster 2 that I had when Miles and I lived together in college. But I just, you don't get that kind of stuff, and I'm not. That sounds bad, but you could get the cardboard cutouts and go home with that stuff. You didn't have to steal them from GameStop, Miles. And
do you feel shame for the ones that you brought home and you look back on? You're like, you know what? Maybe I didn't like the Phantom Menace as much as I thought I would.
No, dude, Darth Maul. It makes it all worth it.
I mean, Jar Jar. I mean, come on. Misa good in the movie.
He's the Sith Overlord. Don't you dare say that.
So, from the employee standpoint, what do y'all feel about how do you guys feel about the hype that's happening around Blockbuster right now because of this documentary? Do you think it's a flash in the pan, or do you think this is something that's just time? You talk now.
I'll go first. I honestly feel for right now, it's a flash in the pan. I think this will go away, but I feel like they touch on it a little bit too. Down the road, when we're very, very old, I think things are cyclical. I think we go through phases. Miles, we talked about this in the jewelry world. Every generation switches between white gold and yellow gold. So we're in the streaming generation now, unless there's some virtual reality movie where you're walking around the entire movie fighting with the Avengers the whole time, which that's a great idea. Let's
actually, that sounds pretty cool.
We should do that. Yeah.
If that's not the next wave, then I feel it's going to get back to a point where it's going to be archaic and cool and retro to go into a place and pick something up and have that hard copy in there and that ownership feeling when society inevitably breaks down and there's no more streaming or no more internet.
Real quick on that point, 2020, I just learned this the other day. 2020 is the first year since 1980, whatever, that vinyl outsold CD.
There you go. And you go into Best Buy now, the CD section is tiny. Things come and go. So I would not be surprised if many generations down the road, the video rental store place came back. But I definitely feel this is a flash in the pan. The documentary definitely makes it sound like it was cool and awesome to be working in a Blockbuster, and it was the awesome job. And even my girlfriend was like, "Oh man, they're making it look like it's the it job," and I was like, "It wasn't." I was embarrassed to tell people I work at a Blockbuster. The whole
they made you wear a polo shirt. It was super lame.
Yeah, and I told you guys before we started recording, I tried to find one of my Blockbuster shirts, but I gave them all away to charity many years ago because they were always oversized because they never had my size, and they were just terrible pieces of article. But it was not as glamorous as it would probably look to work in a Blockbuster. You had those few customers that were past customers that would come in once a day that made your day, but there was always people that came in bitching and moaning and complaining about late fees or about something that happened. I had a lady literally chew me out because 2 Xbox games sold for $60 a piece on her account, saying that she was never told it would happen. She wants the fees taken off. She didn't have the games for that long. And this is when the stores were closing and we were told to get rid of all fees just to help the customer out. That's what we were told. And I literally went, "Ma'am, I'm the one that checked you out. I circled the day the game would sell to you and I circled the amount they would sell for. And I pointed to the points on the receipt." And she had been screaming at me for 15 minutes. And her husband literally went, "I'm going to go wait outside," and turned around and left. And
I love that.
The lady was like super apologetic to me, but I had to take the fees off. That was like $128. Like it's.
But is it
wasn't fun
actual
all the
money
time.
though, Richie? Like you think about it, that's made up money. That's not
Yeah.
actual money. That's not actual loss. If you get that back, it's like, oh, well, we could have rented it this time. Yeah, it could have been broken too. So it's like it could have also been, sitting in the back room and not put out. So I never thought that late fees were actual money. It just made up stuff.
Well, I
Like
did have
real
one,
money.
I did have one guy while the stores were closing, and it was the same store where a guy came in wearing a clown nose. And I was the manager on duty at the time. And he said, my wife says I'm not allowed to come home until I get this late fee taken care of. Would you like to guess how much his late fee was?
$200.
1 penny. And this dude was angry. He was mean. And he said he absolutely had to have that fee taken care of or he'd never come back. And it was the one and only time I didn't take the late fee off.
Ooh, I love that.
I said, sir, I could walk around the store right now and
Stand your ground, dude.
But he was he was such an asshole. And then he did it with the stupid clown nose where he thought he was being funny and he was going to get his way, but he was being a complete dick in the middle of the store. So I was like, no, I'm not going to take the fee off. I go, if I would just ring you up for a new movie rental, you wouldn't have even known the fee was on there. So
yep.
It was like going to battle. No, it wasn't. Not at all. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
And that's the thing too.
Yeah.
There's things. Like Patch. People are glamorizing this, and there's a lot of things about it where it's like any job. Like I wanted to work there because I would have been renting movies, and it saved me money in that aspect. But there's a lot of aspects of that job that were really not okay. It's funny. Like a lot of the abuse that you had to deal with, you really did. The stores were in really bad shape. The bathrooms were a travesty. I mean, it was just really, none of the stores actually owned those buildings. They were all leased. Mm-hmm. That was a huge part of why Blockbuster lost everything because they didn't own any physical property. They
only owned what was on the property, not the actual property.
Exactly. And it's all like just this licensing stuff. But I mean, I remember
that's how McDonald's actually makes money is they own on their franchise deals, they own the property that the franchisees have to pay on. So it's really and
that's smart because you're double dipping because you have to pay a franchise fee and you have to pay a rental fee for it. That's a brilliant maneuver. Blockbuster, I mean, they came from, this guy, John Antiago that they talk about, he came from Home Depot. They didn't mention that part. They just talked about how he came from Taco Bell, right? And he was the Yo Quiero Taco Bell guy.
Which invented my favorite food item on the planet Earth, the cheesy gordita crunch.
That was the best Taco Bell item for sure.
It was. I'm a big gordita guy, so but he ruined Home Depot, and then he left Home Depot and came to Blockbuster. It was kind of a circumstance.
How did that end up?
Not well, I mean,
still in business.
it's just one of those things.
Still holding on, baby.
And I remember just feeling absolutely tricked because I left I had a decent promising retail career at Target and I left to go to Blockbuster because it was like a little bit closer to home and all that. And they're like, we'll give you a 10% raise every year. And I'm like, well, that's better than I get everywhere. Then I find out from my boss, he's like, no, I lied. It's actually 10 cents every year. And I'm like,
you got 10 cents a year?
No, I didn't even get that. I didn't even
I'm
get that.
totally that meme right now because I didn't get jack shit.
Yeah, no, it's what did we get, Richie? I remember getting a copy of Elf, and I remember getting a copy of Bruce Almighty, and then nothing.
I got one raise my first year on my second go around, and then they couldn't afford to give us raises after that. That's why I took the management spot because that was the only way I was going to get a raise.
Yeah.
All right, so this makes me want to ask all three of you, what was your final straw? I know with Richie it went down with the shit, but I want to know your last interaction with Blockbuster as an employee. Or your video store, Jamie, excuse me, whatever. I forgot what it's called, but your last time being an employee with a video rental establishment.
Well, I have no story. There was no final straw. I just stopped working there because I moved away.
And that store is still thriving and doing well, and hopefully they're an excellent health and all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah.
As long as they keep up with their cleaning fees.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a positive.
COVID got them too. Yeah.
So, all right, Justin, how about you? You were a manager, and how did that all come to terms?
We had, as you imagine, Dave had his problems. I think he got in trouble for having sex with someone on camera in the office, and
If you work in a video store, you would think like, don't do anything on tape. Like you have insider knowledge of why this is a bad idea.
It was one of those things. He and I had it out because out of everything on like a review when you give like your employee review for a raise, like he marked me off on ethics, and I'm like, the one thing that you cannot talk to me about are ethics. I'm like, you could tell me I'm late and I'm not, but don't mess with ethics and all that. He's like, well, you're not perfect, so I had to do it. So we had our problems going back and forth. Dave had a huge deal where he got in trouble for sexual harassment and stuff like this, and it basically took down the entire store, and the entire store closed because of this. I left at that time to go into the banking world, and I became a bank manager with a previous Blockbuster manager that I had. So it was like, wow, this is exactly the same as renting people movies, except for we're taking their money. Like, it was exactly the same. So it's like I left to go into banking.
The late fees were a little bigger.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still the same crap, and still the same people would come in and be like, "Oh, I went overdrawn on my checking account." It's like, okay, well, we told you can't buy anything if you don't have money in your account. So, like, and honestly, I had never made such an easy transition. When you go from renting movies to working in a bank, and it's like, this is surprisingly the same. So it was just like, all right, that was it for me. I'm like, okay, and you're going to give me how much? So then I get there, and I'm trying to figure out how to be a banker, and they're like, yeah, it's just like Blockbuster. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah.
Well, that was a happy ending to at least one Blockbuster story there, I guess.
Yeah.
Richie, so like I want to set yours up with the store you worked at one time, like in its heyday when I was actually a customer before we knew each other. Like you were working at a store that it was one point across the street from another store.
Yeah, that's old beach.
Like that's how thriving Blockbuster was. That they were literally across the street from each other.
I always say that they were Starbucks pre-Starbucks, where pretty much every block had a Blockbuster. And I worked in one of those stores or both of those like one or two times. They were never my home store, but I frequented that area all the time. One of them was like a Game Pass store. Focus on games, and literally it's an intersection, and there was on one side of the intersection, on each side you could just walk across the street and go to a different Blockbuster. It was absolutely crazy. I've
literally gone to that Blockbuster to get a movie, and they're like, we're checked out of it, but they have it across the streets.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yep, and I assumed that didn't help Blockbuster too much either. And I like how the documentary points out that Viacom was already in debt by a lot, and that is what contributed to Blockbuster's closing down. But I'm like, yeah, but you also still had to put up with this competition too. And I mean, I never knew the stuff about how they were actually doing okay in the competition department, but I feel like they weren't from the mail-in movie stuff with Blockbuster, but I'm not sure because
real quick on that, as a customer standpoint, Blockbuster had the superior product. Because when you had the movie pass where you could get the DVD by mail, take it back to the store, trade it in for another movie rental, and that automatically triggered your next DVD to be sent by mail, I was in heaven. I literally was in bike riding in Denton. I was in bike riding distance in my Blockbuster, and I was just taking advantage. I was on the 3-disc plan and literally just like cycling them constantly.
It was really just 2 discs because he kept Evil Bong at home all the time.
I do love. We're going to talk about Evil Bong eventually. It's happening.
Well, he's got a point too, Richie, because I remember with Blockbuster, you could get new releases via mail, whereas Netflix, you're like, wow, I got the bonus features disc 6 for Kids in the Hall, the box set.
And I had to wait 3 extra days because somebody else didn't mail it back in.
Well, no, I think you had to wait like 3 or 4 months for the new releases to actually appear on Netflix, if I remember.
Exactly.
There was something contractually where the studios couldn't release it for streaming for a while, if I remember correctly.
Well, not even just that, but when you were getting the discs, like you couldn't get your new copy of I don't know, Wedding Crashers or something like that, but you can go to Blockbuster and you could get that, and then they would have it shipped directly from the store in your area.
And Blockbuster just had weird shit, like in a good way, but Blockbuster just had some fucking weird shit. Like you'd go through and you see a horror movie that you've never seen anywhere else. But it's like, oh, cool. I'm so happy this exists. But I mostly brought that up, Richie, because again, you really rode the wave through like the height of the high points of Blockbuster, and you were there all the way till the end. So how did things get more bleak?
It's honestly the hit from the late fees really, like from a employee standpoint, was great. When it's not late fees, you don't have to worry about going, I'm sorry, sir, you had 3 movies past due and you have a $45 balance of late fees and we need the movies back still. But like that part was great, but I think it definitely hurt the company a lot. But like the decline was honestly like, it was kind of like the lady in the documentary where you would hear a store is closing and you'd be like, huh, this is kind of sad, but like exciting. Like, is this store going to be next? Or like, are we going to do better than the other stores and stay open? Like, what's going to happen here? Like, this is all very, very new territory. And then you would just have your regulars with the movie passes coming in all day, asking the same questions that you've been answering all the time. We were getting letters, statements saying not to go on record as saying anything, if anything ever happened. Like, they didn't want you talking about anything other than we filed chapter 11. Here's a website you can go to, or here's a phone number you can call.
It was exactly what we had when the movie Blood Diamond came out in the jewelry industry, and you had like a preset of like, you have to answer every question about blood diamonds in this manner. You can't differentiate from this.
Yep. Yeah. But, I mean,
it's very specific, guys.
It ties in though, because I rented Blood Diamond from a Blockbuster.
Okay.
I got from Hastings at one point. But no, watching the decline was a very strange thing for something that you thought would never go out of business. But yeah, it's the nature of the beast, right?
We joked about it in our group chat, but I still have my Blockbuster card and my Hastings card. Like, I no longer carry them in my wallet, but that was only until recently when I cleaned out my wallet and like realized they were still in there.
I remember the first 3 numbers of my Blockbuster ID, and I don't remember the rest of it. But
I still have a VHS copy of Go.
Oh, when I decided to quit Netflix, the disc service, I definitely reported that copy of it was Guardians of the Galaxy volume, or the first one, that went missing in the mail.
Oh wow!
Every time in the documentary that Ron Funches was on camera, I was like, "This is fucking Miles."
I don't like Doug Benson, by the way. So I was so glad to see that they had his movie, The Super Jaime and all that, but I don't find Doug Benson funny. I find like he just keeps reaching for comedy, and it's like, you're not there, guy. You're just not there.
I found him funny back at the time that he was making that movie, but I feel like like if you've ever seen like a Crescendo, but like at the same time, he's way better off in comedy than I am, and I'd love to open for him.
That is fair.
I can't ever tell if he's looking at me.
I agree. He just bugs me. Oh, my bridges are burned. I work for Blockbuster. So.
Yeah.
No, I legitimately, I own Super Jaime and love that movie. Absolutely. So, I mean, like that part, I actually thought was kind of funny when we actually got to see him renting his own documentary from the last Blockbuster. There's something kind of sweet about that.
It's cool, and I think that the woman that runs that place is amazing. You know, just like such a dynamic person that's doing all this stuff, and all her kids work there, and you know, it seems like that's the type of vibe you would like to have in what is the last Blockbuster. That was not my experience. And I don't know if people know this, but you can still rent movies and DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff at your local library. I don't know if that is a big secret everywhere, but you can go to the library. It's just like Blockbuster, except for the people don't talk to you.
And they don't have late fees. Well, I guess that is like Blockbuster in the late days.
It definitely is.
Wait, they do have late fees, so it really is. It's very nostalgic in that way.
Yeah, but it's free. Like you just, I'd like to sign up for a library card. Okay, I'd like to rent this copy of Terminator 2. You might see it back in a week. You might not.
They're awfully judgmental of people that don't have permanent addresses.
Yeah, they're funny like that.
This is my stack from the library.
Hey!
All right, what do you got
there?
There?
Some Mystery Science Theater on there.
Science Theater, The Bicycle Thief, Last Picture Show, Radio Flyer.
Oh, cool.
Rough Night.
All right.
What a wide array.
I've seen 2 of those.
All available for free at your local free
library
book pawn shop.
That's the thing. You want to catch up on your copy of E Tu Mama Tambien? There you go.
So
we had so many copies of that. Oh my gosh!
And you know why?
It's Miles. I know you want to wrap up the show, right?
No, you're good. I have actually something else I want to talk about, but go ahead and tell your story.
Well, I was going to say that you're talking about how that lady does a sweet job running that store and everything. I definitely got like PTSD watching her go to buy the new releases of other places.
I remember because we talked about that. Yeah, I'd be on the phone with you sometimes when you'd be at those buys.
They knew I was up late every time, so on Monday night I would go to Walmart at midnight with the store's credit card, and because the person they had do it before me was a girl that looked really young. She looked like she was like 14, even though she was like 22. So they would stop her every time she was buying all the movies with a credit card that wasn't hers. So they gave me the store credit card, and I would go to Walmart with a list of how many of each kind of movie I had to buy. And it became like, they were like, you can't tell them that you work for Blockbuster. Like, you can't tell them while you're there. So I would go in there once a week and be like, yeah, I work for a bank, and we did such a good job at our bank that they're like buying they gave us a list of movies that each employee wanted, and we get to go buy them. And it was such a bullshit story.
Then, the stone kid that makes minimum wage is just like, just tell me what fucking movies you want, dude.
The awkward part was that like there's also an old guy that put the new movies out, and he would just give. There was another Blockbuster that would go to that Walmart to buy movies, and it's a guy that was the assistant store manager, the first one I ever worked at, like 10 years before that. So I ran into him once or twice, and he'd be like, "Oh, hey, Richie, what's up?" And he wasn't lying at all. He was like, "Yeah, I'm just buying these for our store." So he didn't give two shits about it. And after that, I stopped caring.
Under anyway, I don't really fucking care.
Yeah, but it was always so weird buying these brand new movies in bulk. And I was like, man, I guess they're saving money because they're not paying, $100 per disc. But you take them back to the store, and they just had those generic covers they would make for some of the movies, and then some of them would be okay. But it was just such a weird experience. I will always remember that, and I definitely got flashbacks when I saw her buying that stuff.
Yeah,
dude. I remember just like us as nerds would be really excited about something coming out at midnight on a Tuesday because that's when all new movies come out, and we would be up at Blockbuster like ripping boxes open because they're like just putting pallets out, and we're like searching for like Entourage season 3 or whatever the fuck we were after at the time. But like that definitely brings back flashbacks. But something I wanted to say in terms of just like a really like, I guess, feel good thing that I've seen coming from the Blockbuster brand and from this documentary. I don't really know this person. We're Facebook friends. His name is Ryan Talmo, and he's from San Diego, California. He just started this thing in the last couple of weeks that I've been seeing him branding all over the internet, where it's free Blockbuster, hashtag free Blockbuster. And what he seems to have done, if I'm getting this wrong, I apologize, but my understanding from like being a Facebook friend of his, they've like rebranded like a newspaper thing that you can get newspapers out of. They painted it blue, and then they put a Blockbuster logo on it, but it says, instead of just Blockbuster, it says free Blockbuster. And this is very much just like a kind of neighborhood, like community thing where they stocked it with a bunch of random DVDs. And the whole idea is just like, hey, if you want a DVD, bring a DVD that you no longer like, bring a DVD from home and put it into this and take another DVD. And it's a completely like running thing or whatever, but it's hashtag free Blockbuster. And I think that's cool. Beautiful. It kind of like, I'm like, man, I kind of want to try to do that. Like here, they're doing it in San Diego. I kind of want to bring that to Dallas.
That would be cool. Like, I've been to the one in Oklahoma. It's right next to the Oklahoma Improv Theater downtown.
Oh, so this might be a bigger deal. So that already opens my eyes. I haven't done any research. Is this already a bigger thing than San Diego? Like this is a project that I've heard of?
Yeah, I just saw, I thought it originated in Oklahoma, but I just saw today that they opened one in Cincinnati as well.
So maybe it's already in Dallas and I'm just naive.
Maybe. I've definitely seen the ones with books, but not like in the style.
I've seen the books, especially in like neighborhoods. People will do that, like just like, hey, bring a book, take a book type of thing.
That's a real interesting idea. Of
like painting one. Let's start one in Dallas.
Yeah, Jamie, let's we'll get on that. I've got some DVDs I donate.
I'm down for that. Me too.
I'll send you guys something.
Yeah, I think that. Well, let's get it going in your city too, dude. Like, let's just like help. Like, We'll get. I'm gonna tag this dude, Ryan Talmo, man. I know we've been on a Zoom comedy show together, so hopefully this is cool. But we're gonna expand this idea. I think it's a really cool one.
Finally,
I don't know if I have enough
with
DVDs.
my transfer and destroys. I can get those back out there.
Those sons of bitches. I still hurts me. It
Karmic
still
scales.
hurts me. I remember, like, we'd literally be having a conversation, and he'd be like buffing the disc out, and I'd be like, "Dude, just slide one to me." But like, I get it, you're on camera and shit, and like, I didn't want to get him in trouble, but like, it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm never gonna watch Desert Saints, but I own it. You know, it's
I
a
have
movie.
so many of the like, whenever they were going out of business, I bought so many of their pre-owned selection stuff because they were going on such ridiculous clearance for a while. I mean, it's like buy one get 18 free. It's like good luck finding 18 movies you want.
It's so crazy to hear that, Richie, you had to go and buy these because we didn't have that issue, but we had like the issues with like, oh, Universal isn't playing nice with us, so we're only getting 7 copies of the 40-year-old virgin. I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like, what are we supposed to do with this?
We have that guaranteed in stock. How are we supposed to manage?
You're exactly right. That was the time that this came out, and it was like, oh yeah, well, we only had 4 copies of Seed of Chucky. Now remember, I live in the ghetto. There's two movies that they wiped in the ghetto: Scarface and anything with Chucky in it. So having 5 copies of the Seed of Chucky, it was not cool, and it was a rough scene.
My second go around Blockbuster was towards the end of the guaranteed and stocked phase, so I didn't have to do that too much.
God, yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. You know,
well, I definitely remember getting some rain checks, and I was like, "Oh, this is rad, free rental." I was honestly borderline excited when the movie I wanted wasn't in stock because it's like cool, and like at that point they were so flippantly giving those out. They're like, "Oh, did you want this?" And it's like, "No, not really."
No,
like, are you sure? Did you not want this movie?
It was funny to see somebody admitting in the doc that they would be standing over by the drop box and be like, "What movie is that?" Because that happened in every Blockbuster all the time. Whenever a movie would be out, that customers would just congregate over by the drop box area. When one movie would get dropped off, they'll be like, "Hey, what movie is that?"
It's like a basketball free throw, and everybody's trying to box each other out for the rebound.
Did they tell the Fred Durst story on this at the Blockbuster Movie Awards and how Fred Durst screwed over Blockbuster?
No.
Do you know the story,
sounds
Richie?
like a perfect story to go out on. Let's rock this out.
So Fred Durst, obviously the main lead singer of Limp Bizkit, so he goes on the Blockbuster Movie Awards named for Blockbuster movies, Blockbuster Video. So he starts talking about how he hates late fees and never pays them. He's like, man, you know what I used to do? I would just go to the next town and sign up for a card there so I wouldn't have to pay and I could just rent whenever I wanted. When I got late fees there, I go and do the other thing. Devastated the business because this was not well known, and some people were like, oh, everybody knew that. Everybody. I remember writing reports every day where people would be sent to collections because of their of the late fees and stuff. But Fred Durst was also a huge person that helped throw the nail in the coffin of Blockbuster.
Was that when they started locking your account when you go to other stores? It'd be like, oh, I can't. You got to lock on your account from another store.
Yep.
It's a shame those Blockbuster awards were on a day where he just didn't want to wake up.
Yeah. It was, hey, at that time it was his way or the highway, so there's not much you could do.
You just got to keep rolling.
He did rent Fight Club about 29 times.
Awesome.
God. I don't know what's
wrong. All right. So let's hold up here.
Go ahead, Richie.
So we're all Blockbuster employees in this scenario. What movie are you recommending? One movie you can recommend. Miles, what movie are you recommending?
You know mine, it's Evil Bong, and I'll tell you exactly why. First of all, it's the best movie ever made, and you just are. If you don't agree, you're wrong. Also, I highly recommend you watch it on drugs. That's my pitch for Evil Bong.
Jamie.
Wait, do you think that's why they didn't hire me?
Jamie, you got one movie to recommend at your store. What are you recommending?
Yeah, I'll say one of my picks was Donnie Darko, and I like that one just because it's a good conversation starter movie. So if I get you hooked on Donnie Darko, then you can come back and I have some other recommends for you if you like it.
And you can kind of that's a movie you can take either way. If it's like, I didn't really dig it and here's why, or I loved it and here's why, you can kind of, that's a really good
It's like
baseline
a
movie.
ink blot. Yeah.
Yeah, ink blot's a good word for it.
Yeah, that's like how you throw Simpsons quotes out there to see who's going to be your friend or not where you work. Yeah,
Yep.
the litmus test. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, sir? What is your last recommendation?
Jeez, I would have to say Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Oh yes, great choice. Great choice.
Solid.
I remember all the time around when Inception came out that everyone was always all about Inception and the whole Christopher Nolan Dark Knight series. So they always wanted something different and dramatic, and no one had ever seen Memento. So I used to recommend that movie like crazy back in the day. And people would always come back going, "Oh, that was so cool and different. Oh, what else you got?" Well, there's no other Memento, man.
Well, check out Equalizer. It's not as good, but similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd also throw Big Fish in there a lot.
Oh, Big Fish.
Oh, I
is
love Big
great.
Fish. Big Fish is a.
There you go.
That's not how
Yeah.
I go. That is the one Big Fish impression that you're ever going to see.
Honestly, that's one of my that is a moving movie for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we got the perfect mix up of people right here for this conversation. This is so much fun. Like I'm really glad that we just got to like chill and talk about our memories of Blockbuster. Like this was an absolute blast. I love you both as guests and people and would be happy to have you back on. But for now, Jamie, you run a variety show and I'm so excited to be a part of it on 420 Typecast.
Yeah.
But why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about that?
Sure. It's not fully booked yet, so I've got Miles and probably Shuffle Prov are going to be on there. But it's going to be, a variety show with some improv, some stand-up, some games, some videos, some weird videos I edit together, all with the theme of smoking marijuana for that beautiful holiday. And one last surprise I have to go. I really wish this was Cool as Ice, but I did find this at the thrift store. It's this copy of the movie Living Out Loud.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Oh, that case brings back
good find.
Memories.
How's that smell when you open it?
Like home.
I'm sure somebody's already made a candle scent out of that, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
And Justin, I mentioned it earlier. I called you the Turtles guy because that's what I know and love about you most is that we love the Ninja Turtles. But tell everybody about Epic Tells and Epic Shells and all of your turtle stuff and everything else.
Okay, so a couple things. Epic Shells is a Facebook group for anyone who loves Ninja Turtles. We actually have a bunch of the turtle creators themselves in the group, which is pretty cool. You can actually get to interact with them and all that and talk turtles, anything that you like. Epic Tales from the Sewers is a podcast where I go through the comics and say, for example, the new one, The Last Ronin, I actually go through and do the whole thing with voices and stuff like that, and we go through the plots. And I'm starting to get some pretty good interviews on there. I just had the artist of the Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover on, Freddie Williams. That was pretty fun. So that's cool. And the big thing, the one thing I just am a part of that I rolled out tonight, if anybody watching this happens to be a podcaster or on YouTube or on Twitch, we are doing the Amalgamania Podcast and Entertainment Awards. So pass that around. You can get it on Amalga, AMALGA -mania, MANIA.com. And you can check that out and for all the details on how to submit. And I'm hoping Best Darn Deadly.
Anybody who's going to be interested in that.
Miles, I wonder if we'll be a top 20 Simpsons podcast on that.
I don't know how you're not. I avidly listen to like 3 podcasts a week, and Best Darn Diddly is one of the top 3 that I listen to on a weekly basis. So
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said.
Honestly, that warms my heart.
Yeah. I'm a super nerd, so mostly for your show.
We found our people. That's so excellent. Thank you guys so much for being here and being a part of the show. And again, Simpsons episodes or these bullshit episodes that are so much fun. Come back anytime because I love you both and love getting to talk with you. Richie, we do things. Tell them about it.
I just want to say as we're closing out here, I talk a lot of mad shit about what we went through traumatically through Blockbuster and working there. But at the end of the day, it was a very, very fun job. Like you got to watch movies and rent movies, and I rented Call of Duty Modern Warfare for like 2 months straight when I first got internet for gaming. Like I got dates from working at Blockbuster. I got to meet friends from working at Blockbuster.
Yeah.
It was a great experience, good with the bad, but I wanted to give Blockbuster a little bit of love since I'm just a little apprehensive with how much love it's getting when these people didn't love it back in the day, with the exception of a few. But you can follow, with that sour note, you can follow Miles.
If you want to hear our other old man bitter takes,
You can follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off. You can follow me at @thewiz_kid23. Most importantly, you can follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That is DIDDLY.
guys, thank you so much, as always, for downloading, listening, sharing, telling people about us, or just like not actively sending bad vibes our way. We appreciate all of that so much. Make sure you come back again next week, as we'll be getting back to our normal Simpsons take, and we will be reviewing the episode Take My Wife Sleaze.
If you join it late, I promise there's no more late fees.
And until next time,